the fiercest bombing of Gaza yet. Israel pounds Gaza Strip from air, land and sea. Gaza Strip has been split into two. Benjamin Netanyahu insists no pause till hostages are returned. The death toll reaches 10,000 according to Gaza authorities. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in the region again. Massive escalation in Israel's war on Hamas. That's our top focus on India First.
And amidst this humanitarian crisis and losses of life in the Gaza Strip, there is a clamor for a pause in the bombing of Gaza Strip. Israel claims to have targeted more than 400 Hamas targets in the past 24 hours. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in West Asia. The region is demanding a pause. Will the US do so? Will Israel do so? The US, of course, has sent a nuclear submarine to join two of its aircraft carrier strike groups in the Mediterranean Sea. And all of this indicates that there could be a massive escalation in the days and weeks ahead. Tal Heinrich, spokesperson for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, joins me on this special broadcast. It's been 1 month of Israel's war on Hamas terror, and will there be a pause or will there be an escalation? I'll put that question, but first, as always, the headlines at 10. Delhi government brings back odd-even rule as Delhi air quality remains hazardous. Punjab farm fires rise. Respite from toxic air likely in the next 4 days. Madras High Court slams Tamil Nadu police for inaction on the Sanatan Dharm controversy, says the Tamil Nadu police failed to act against Udaynidhi Stalin. Trouble for former cricketer and Congress leader Muhammad Azharuddin. Azhar booked for alleged misappropriation of funds as Hyderabad Cricket Board president. Israel has intensified its bombing in the Gaza Strip in the past 24 hours. The night sky lit up with multiple missiles pounding what the Israeli Defense Forces have described as strongholds of Hamas leadership and storage of weapons. Israeli Defense Forces have also destroyed several tunnels, insisting they now have split Gaza Strip into two, north and south. Gaza City has been completely encircled, and two refugee camps have also been in the line of Israeli fire. Hospital authorities in Gaza have claimed that the death toll is now close to 10,000, including more than 3,000 children. Let me now get you the top developments in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Israeli Defense Forces claim to have struck more than 450 Hamas targets in the past 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. The health ministry in the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip claimed that Palestinian death toll in Israel-Hamas war has now crossed the 10,000 mark. A major Hamas military compound was taken over by the Israeli Defense Forces. Israel claimed several Hamas terrorists have been neutralized and weapons and explosives seized. Fearing escalation, the US has now deployed a nuclear submarine in the Mediterranean Sea. This is to deny movement of hostile naval forces from playing any role in the region. The Israeli forces have made deeper inroads in the Gaza Strip. They've claimed to have split Gaza Strip into two parts, taking complete control of the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Israeli Defense Forces engineers are now systematically decimating the network of tunnels in the area that is there in their control to deny free movement to Hamas fighters in these tunnels. The IDF also claimed it had killed a top Hamas commander while a Safa in an airstrike. Israel claimed an Israeli Air Force fighter jet killed the commander of Hamas Deir al-Bala battalion in the Central Camps Brigade. Safa, together with other commanders of the Central Camp Brigade, was responsible for sending the Hamas Nukba terrorists into Israeli territory during the 7th of October terror strike and the massacre that followed. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to the President of Iran, Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi, on the developments in West Asia. The Prime Minister posted a message saying there was a good exchange of perspective on the difficult situation in West Asia and the Israel-Hamas conflict. The Prime Minister said terrorist incidents, violence and loss of civilian lives are a serious concern. Joining me now for more on Israel's war on Hamas and the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip is Tal Heinrich, spokesperson of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Tal Heinrich, there are reports from the Gaza Strip that say that the death toll is now either touching or has crossed 10,000, and a third are children in Israel's bomb attacks. Has US Secretary of State Antony Blinken also sought a pause in the bombing so that more humanitarian assistance could be sent in?
Well, thank you for having me on today on your program, Gaurav. First, regarding the number that you just mentioned, we should keep in mind that these numbers coming from the Gaza Strip are numbers that Hamas are providing. These are terrorists, brutal, gruesome terrorists, and we should not be trusting them and the numbers that they provide, because, for instance, if you remember, for example, the Al Ahli hospital incident, which was struck by a Palestinian Islamic Jihad missile just a few weeks ago, they gave a death toll of 500 casualties 5 minutes after that missile misfell within the Gaza Strip, their own missile, and I'm repeating it because it's important. And after that, European and American outlets conducted their own investigations, and the number wasn't even close to that. In fact, was much, much lower. So again, we don't want to see any civilian casualties in Gaza. We don't want to see Palestinian civilians being caught in the crossfire. That's why we told them, we urged them for 3 weeks now to evacuate to the safer havens. But again, to your other question now, there's no daylight between Jerusalem and Washington. Everyone understands that the job has to be done. Hamas must be eliminated. We have decided as a nation that we can no longer live next to a terrorist enclave, and this is why we're acting in Gaza right now. The pressure should be on Hamas. There shouldn't be any pressure on Israel, because our cause is just and it's clear.
You want the pressure to be on Hamas, but the world wants a pause in bombing. There are several countries that are saying so. Will there be some kind of a pause or a ceasefire in bombing for additional humanitarian aid and a humanitarian corridor to be created for evacuation of those who are caught in the line of fire or in the crossfire?
There are dozens of trucks carrying many medical supplies and food and water entering the Gaza Strip every day, reaching these safer havens in the southwest, where the residents of the northern Gaza Strip have evacuated. We're talking about more than 900,000 Palestinians, as far as I know, that have evacuated from the heavy fighting areas in the north. So humanitarian aid is reaching the Palestinian civilians. But in terms of a humanitarian pause, you see, we've had humanitarian pause when Hamas released 2 hostages and then 2 other hostages, because we wanted to facilitate their safe exit from the Gaza Strip. And we said that we will be willing to consider more humanitarian pauses of this kind once Hamas releases more hostages. So we want to see international pressure mounting on Hamas to release more hostages. We're exerting military pressure and diplomatic pressure against Hamas, because this is what we want to see, our sons and daughters safe back in Israel.
But Tal Heinrich, what is Israel's roadmap for peace? Peace that can be described as just, durable and sustainable. How does one strive for peace and a ceasefire in this region at this stage? It's been 1 month of this conflict already.
Well, it is very premature to talk in terms of peace right now because we are in a war, and we're in a war that we didn't start. We didn't want. We were very surprised, in fact, on October 7th when this war started, when Hamas death squads butchered us and raped us and mutilated us and abducted 242 hostages into the Gaza Strip. So there are different contingency plans that we have been discussing, not only amongst ourselves, by the way, with our international partners, including with our best friends, the United States. But it is very premature to discuss them right here on air, because first, pure evil must be eradicated. Hamas can be no longer. None of these plans that we can talk about includes Hamas as a ruling entity in the Gaza Strip. Once Hamas is gone, Israelis will be way more secured, and the Palestinians, they might have new opportunities should they choose differently. But everyone has to understand that the choice of terrorism will always lead to a dead end.
But can you explain what does Hamas gone actually mean on ground? Till Hamas is completely decimated as a fighting force or as an entity at the Gaza Strip?
So that will be a decision. You're asking me when will the goal of the military operation be achieved? So that is a decision that will be taken by our government, our leadership and the generals in the military. Hamas can no longer be a threat of this magnitude and this scale as they were on October 7th. They can never be allowed to do what they did. Their governance bodies in the Gaza Strip should be eliminated. They can no longer control the population in Gaza once we're done with them. And they will no longer have the motivation, in fact, to hurt us as they did on October 7th once this operation is completed. If you're asking me what does it practically mean, if we need to kill all of Hamas terrorists, or should they surrender and be expelled to different countries, we will see. And that is a military and you know, our politicians will have to discuss and decide that. But we're not there yet. We're still working on eliminating them. And in fact, we've done a lot in the past 3 weeks. As far as I've heard, more than 3,000 Hamas terrorists have been killed already. And we are targeting their infrastructure that is unfortunately embedded in civilian structures as well, and underneath them, and they're hiding under population, cynically using them as human shields. So it's not an easy mission, as you can imagine. It's not an easy mission. This is why we have ground forces in Gaza right now.
You know what, when you say that you will target Hamas leadership and Hamas infrastructure, does that mean that Israel will target hospitals? I believe there's a report that another hospital was in the line of Israeli fire even today. Schools, mosques, churches, and homes, if there is credible intelligence of Hamas command and control centers or weapons storage or tunnels underneath mosques or hospitals and schools.
It doesn't mean that, but I can tell you, I can't talk about a specific target and tell you if we may or may not hit it and when exactly, because I can't sit here and speculate. But we said that somebody's talking to me in my ear, so I'll take out the earplug for a second. But I will say that any place where Hamas terrorists are hiding is a legitimate military target. And we called on civilian population in the Gaza Strip to evacuate from these areas where these tunnels are at, and where the heavy fighting is now taking place, because we don't want to see anyone being caught in the crossfire between us and Hamas.
Okay. But while Israel is bombing Gaza Strip, and while you say that about 3,000 Hamas fighters have been neutralized so far, what about Hamas leadership? What about leaders like Mashal Khaled or Ismail Hanaya, who may be living elsewhere, including in Qatar?
Well, we said that Hamas leadership is illegitimate. It doesn't matter if they sit in the Gaza Strip or abroad. We call on the nations of the civilized world to apply sanctions on any country that hosts them, that invites them, and so on. And, Qatar, for example, right now, they're hosting the Hamas leadership, and they say that it might benefit the West, the fact that they're there, because they might be able to open diplomatic avenues, so to say, to bring to the release of the hostages. So I say this, the proof of the burden of the proof is on them. They have to prove that this method is somehow working to benefit us too.
Okay. So Israel insists its operations in the Gaza Strip will continue till the time the hostages are returned. For joining me here on India Today, Tal Heinrich, many thanks. Now they say truth is stranger than fiction. When web series Fauda was released, not many thought that a big group of terrorists could ever successfully attack Israel. But on the 7th of October, more than 2,000 terrorists armed to the teeth actually did. What now and what next for Israel? The creator of Fauda, Avi Issacharoff, joins me on this special broadcast. And Avi, it's such a privilege to have you on the show. I want to understand from you, the 7th of October, that was an absolute nightmare. Your thoughts 1 month after the worst terror attack in Israel's history, sir.
So I must say that the Israeli people, the state of Israel are still in shock from the massacre that took place on October 7th with the 1,400 people that were massacred on that day, on that terrible day, and the 240 hostages that were taken into Gaza. Since then, we had seen some kind of waking up in the Israeli side and retaliating for what Hamas did, meaning what we see today on the ground in Gaza is a massive ground operation of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and they are taking a bite after a bite from what was under Hamas control, and slowly, they are going to take over the Gaza Strip. I don't know yet what will happen after that, but I'm sure that Gaza City will fall very soon to the hands of the IDF. I can only assume that we will not see Hamas as a government, as a regime, back in power in Gaza.
So are you saying that Gaza City will fall very soon? Are you indicating that Israel's military objectives are in sight?
I will try to make it a little bit more down to the details. There are two aims for the Israeli operation. One is to bring down, to topple Hamas's regime, the government. Right now, the government stopped functioning. There's no control of Hamas above the ground in Gaza. The IDF is closing on the center of Gaza City, which is the symbol of Hamas's regime. So that is achievable, and we're very close to end this battle over the Gaza City. But we know that many of Hamas operatives are hiding underground, underneath Gaza City and underneath the Gaza Strip in general. And over there, that's a different story. So I think that one target is achievable, which is topple Hamas's regime or bringing down Hamas's regime. The other one, to eliminate Hamas's military capabilities, that will take a way longer time. I'm not sure that it's achievable, but I'm sure that it is achievable to damage it in a very severe way. And this is what already been done on the ground in Gaza.
So, Avi Issacharoff, the fighters on ground, the Hamas terrorists on ground may be neutralized. Now, you just heard the spokesperson in Israel Prime Minister's office who joined me, who said that close to 3,000 or 3,000 plus Hamas terrorists have been neutralized so far. What about Hamas leaders who are living a very comfortable life, maybe in Qatar, maybe in other countries? What about leaders like Ismail Haniyeh?
Right now, we haven't heard about any Israeli intentions to get to them in Qatar, at least, because Qatar is the mediator between Hamas and the Israeli government over the hostages. I am sure that, if I would have been a Hamas official today living abroad or in Gaza, I would make sure not 10 times a day, but 100 times a day that I'm not going to be killed in the next minute or an hour, because we do understand that all Hamas's leadership is a walking target today. And many of them are dead men walking. Some of them know that. Some of them do not understand that yet.
You conceptualized further, you thought of various scenarios, but what according to you went wrong on the 7th of October? Because Israel, with its fence, with its underground sensors, with its CCTV cameras, with Shin Bet and Mossad, with the IDF, was considered as a citadel for its people. Why did everything fail, and how did Hamas succeed?
Regardless of Fauda, because Fauda, at the end of the day, it's a TV show, it's fiction. I think that in reality, everything went wrong on October 7th. Everything, including everything. I mean, it was the worst day for the Israeli army, for the Israeli intelligence, for the Israeli leadership. All of them together collapsed. The conception that was led by our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, that we can do some business with Hamas, failed completely. The IDF deployment on the border failed completely. The Israeli intelligence, they were the ones that were supposed to bring the information, and they failed also. So it's a kind of a collateral failure for everyone, including everyone, in what happened on October 7th. For Hamas, it was like winning the lottery twice in a row. What are the chances for that? I think that they themselves were very much shocked from how successful they were on the battlefield.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on the battle for the mind space, the battle of narratives that's on virtually across the world? And Israel, despite having lost 1,400 of its people, despite 240 plus being held hostage by Hamas, Israel is in the line of global fire.
It's complete madness. I think that it's coming out of pure ignorance and pure anti-Semitism. People tend to not like Jews, and people tend to not understand the reality on the ground. I'm not sure that people in Europe, in the campuses in the US, understand that Hamas is a terrorist organization that is calling for the elimination of the state of Israel. I'm not sure that they know that Hamas took over Gaza in a coup in 2007, killing 160 Palestinians, Fatah members, the Palestinian Authority members. Why? Because they wanted to take over. And since then, it's a Sharia law dictatorship where they treat people, they treat men, they treat women like animals. Women are not allowed to go to places alone. LGBT rights, it's totally forbidden. They behave like dictators, like radical Islamist dictators. This is A. B, people do not understand that the Israelis didn't siege over Gaza. They had some kind of an open border. We had around 18,500 people coming out of Gaza every day to work in Israel. Outside my house here in Tel Aviv, I had people from Rafah, which is the southern area of Gaza, working here in Tel Aviv. We had some Palestinians coming to the hospitals, working in Israel, getting fuel, electricity, water, and all this under a terrorist organization. So Israel did try to give them some kind of economic prosperity, but at the end of the day, after billions of dollars that were transferred to Gaza in investment, what Hamas did is to take all this money and invest it instead of its own people in building a military capabilities. And you know what? Since then, we see one thing that is very, very obvious. Hamas wants dead Palestinians. Hamas is shooting rockets from inside populated areas, is sending the people to shoot on the Israeli side. Everything in order to make the Israelis retaliate and to kill civilians, Palestinian civilians, and by that, blaming Israel for committing atrocities. This is Hamas. Okay. This is the monster that we've been dealing with.
Avi Issacharoff for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. Israel's war on Hamas. We'll be tracking the story very, very closely. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.